Did schools buy technology or did they buy a plan? When did handing a kid a device become the same thing as teaching them? And why is the second largest school district in America just now asking if any of it works? Welcome to the Education Evolution, and you're listening to Tech Evolution. This is a podcast for the thinkers, the doers, and those who understand that the most important lessons aren't always learned in school. I'm your host, Jihad, but you can call me Mr. Jihad. And if you're new here, welcome in, pull up a chair, you found the right place. And if you're a regular, you already know what we're doing, so I am glad that you are back. Now, Tech Evolution is typically the space where we dig into how a specific tool, a program, or a platform is really shaping learning. But today, we're going to go ahead and zoom out because this episode isn't about one tool. It's about this whole era that we are in present day. How American schools went all in on tech and what is happening today. But before we go any further, this is not a screens are bad conversation. I promise you. You're literally watching this on the screen right now. I see you. This is an implementation conversation, and there's a big difference. And since your eyes are already on the screen, go ahead and hit the subscribe button right now. Now let's get into this story. It starts with a promise because for years, schools were told that tech is the answer. More devices means innovation, more access means more equity. Put a Chromebook in every student's hands and watch the magic work. And nobody wants to push back on that because the intention was right. In 2013, the Los Angeles Unified School District, the second largest school district in the country, launched an initiative to put an iPad in the hands of all 650,000 of its students within 2 years. 2 years. That was the promise. And then came the implementation. The rollout was slow. Uptake in the classrooms was poor. And believe it or not, an FBI investigation was even opened into how the contracts were awarded. No charges, though, but no accountability either. And the lesson that should have been learned there, it wasn't, because the belief in the promise never wavered. Then March 2020 happened, and the promise got even louder than ever. Now, let me set this up for you. I left the classroom in 2019, the summer before everything shut down. So I got to be upfront. I am not going to stand here and tell you I lived through the pandemic classroom experience because I didn't. The story belongs to the teachers who stayed, but here's what I need you to understand. The implementation problem, it didn't start with COVID. COVID just gave everybody an excuse to stop asking questions because overnight, student devices became a necessary lifeline. Screen time limits, we weren't talking about that because every child needed access. And also, every child needed to stay connected. And that was a real actuality given the environment that we were in. It was necessary. So I'm not going to argue with that. But what happened after that? When the buildings reopened and the dust settled, and it's even something that we talked about before, because nobody stopped to ask, wait, is any of this actually working? We just kept going because the devices were there, the contracts were signed, the platforms were paid for in full. And I'll be the person to tell you that I taught in special education before all of this. And listen, some of the tech that I had access to, it was amazing. The tools that helped me differentiate and really build pull-out lessons to meet my students exactly where they were, in my room with my students, in the environment that I could control. But the second that student walked out my door and back into the gen ed classroom, gone, all of it. The scaffolding that I built, the support specific to that student, none of it was traveling with them because there was no transition, no handoff, nothing. While the tool may have worked, the system around it, it didn't. And if that's happening in special education where individualized supports are literally written into federal law, imagine what's happening everywhere else. Fast forward to 2026, we have a parent by the name of Lila who starts noticing that her son is never without his school iPad, to the point to where he gets penalized for not having it during PE, physical education class, with the device. Make it make sense. So Miss Lila asked the school, okay, so why is there so much of a digital learning expectation, although the pandemic ended some time ago? And that's when she gets the answer, well, we got these things during COVID, and so we might as well keep using them. Who told Miss Lila that? Because we got to have a conversation. Might as well keep using them. That's it. That's the strategy that we're deploying present day. And this is the reason as to why we can't believe in this space of innovation. So she starts talking to other parents and eventually founds Schools Beyond Screens. Thousands of families across the country, families who are reporting grades are dropping, their kids are being distracted by games and YouTube and social media, on devices that the schools are requiring them not only to have, but to be able to use them in class. And so on April 21st, 2026, LAUSD voted 620 to restrict students' use of laptops and tablets in class. And they're the first major American school system to do so. This is the same district that launched the iPad initiative in 2013. And so here we are 13 years later, and we're full circle moment. Nobody wants to say the quiet part out loud. That we should have been asking this question a long time ago. And before anybody thinks this is just a LA problem, it ain't. 37 states and the District of Columbia have already enacted bans or some type of restriction on student devices. And 19 states are now considering legislation to limit all screen time, not just phones, district issued devices included. Since January alone, Alabama, Tennessee, Utah, and Virginia have all passed legislation to pull back on tech in classrooms. More than 10 other states are right behind them. So yeah, y'all, the pendulum is swinging hard and very fast. But here's where I need us to really slow down for a second, because pulling back on screens is not going to be the automatic right answer. The American Academy of Pediatrics updated their guidance this year in January, and they moved away from the rigid time limits that they used to have. Their position now is about quality, context, and the difference between active and passive use. Go figure. A student doing a targeted reading intervention is not the same as a student watching YouTube in third period. Any policy that treats those two things identically, that's not a policy that's built for students. And for students with disabilities, LAUSD's resolution explicitly requires the district to factor in each student's disability category when setting screen time limits. Now, I believe that that is the right call, because less screen time cannot, under any circumstance, mean that we're moving to an environment of less access. So where do we go from here? Not more tools, not more restrictions, but implementation is the key. I promise. And the people, the actual humans to carry it out, because the roles that need to exist and largely don't present day, they look like this: an AI literacy coach, or a digital learning implementation specialist, a family digital literacy liaison, instructional technology strategist, people whose whole job is to build the bridge between the tool and the teacher, the classroom and the pullout lesson that they're getting, between the platform and the actual outcome, which is what we should be tying all this to anyways. Because if you can fund the platform, you can fund the person who makes the platform work. After the vote, LAUSD's acting superintendent said technology is most effective when used purposefully and guided by educators. Believe me, you agree with that. But now let's make sure that the system that we're actually going to be deploying the technology in is built to support it, because a statement is not a system. And good intentions didn't work the first time around. The framework that I put in front of every single district right now is just 4 words: purpose, people, practice, proof. What is the problem that we are trying to solve? Who is responsible for making it work? What does it look like in a real classroom on a Tuesday morning, not in a presentation? And how do we know it worked? Because if a tool can't answer all 4, it's not ready to be deployed. And if a policy can't answer all 4, it's going to create more confusion than it will clarity. So here's where we are. LAUSD has until June to turn this resolution into an actual policy. 16 states introduced legislation this year. So this conversation is happening in boardrooms, in classrooms, and in parent group chats right now. And honestly, that's a step in the right direction. Not because the answer is obvious, but because we're finally asking the right questions. Did the tech work? Did we ever give teachers what they needed to make it work? And who got left behind when we moved too fast and asked too little questions? So the story is not over, but the next chapter has to be different, because the problem was never the screen. The problem is that we handed teachers a tool, handed students a device, and then said, yeah, we are really transforming some things. But we didn't ask ourselves, is it meaningful transformation that is happening? So purpose first, tool second, and always be human-centered. Student-centered, that is. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and drop this in the comments. I need to know, what's the most useless piece of technology you ever saw deployed in a school? The thing that showed up, nobody explained it, and it quietly disappeared the following year. And I also want to know, if you could create one role inside a school specifically designed to make technology actually work, what would that person do every day? I got to hear from you. And like I told y'all before, if you are not subscribed yet, please, what are you doing? We need you. This community grows one person at a time, so please subscribe, share, and send it to somebody who needs this conversation in their life today. The system that we are building around education, it's not by accident. They are intentional choices that we are making. And guess what? Those choices can be changed. But it's important for us to develop our awareness so that we are able to develop our voice. Until next time, peace.